It's a pleasure being here today. My name is Daniel Oppenheim, and I work as a senior consultant and partner at Matters Group, which is a management consultancy working to integrate sustainability and societal issues in the core business of our clients. This session is about next generation transport. How to make public transport sustainable in India. We have focus areas such as how to provide inhabitants of megacities with sustainable and customer-friendly public mobility solutions, e-mobility, e-rickshaws, long-hauling trucking, safety and system design. I have a connection to India as well. When I finished my master in business for 9 years ago, I think, I went to India because I want to work at a grassroots level before I maintain a career in sustainable development. So I went to Rajasthan and worked in the outskirts of a town called Sikar. I lived in a village called Kanvarpura, and every day I went to this community called Banjara Basti. At the time, I was taught that I was working with a group that was called the Untouchables, street children or street families. And this experience, of course, made a huge impact on me. I'm really glad that I was there, understanding and working and get to know people of India. I went back the next year and have been involved in this organization since then. And this was 2010. I didn't have smartphones. It was not as widespread at that time. And of course, a lot of has happened since then, also giving the opportunities for people in a connecting society. So it's going to be really interesting to hear how e-mobility can help the people of India and how that also drive the society forward. So it's a pleasure for me to introduce the panel. Please come. We have Raoul Joshi, engagement manager at McKinsey. We have Catarina Naucler, R&D, Fortum, Sweden, and Bhagwan Bindiganavile, Vice President, Marketing and Strategy, Volvo Buses. So just before you introduce yourself, so we will introduce, they will introduce themselves for 5 minutes each. And then we will have a panel discussion trying to cover a big picture perspective around this topic, next generation transport. And of course, to hear about the specific cases and the industry perspective from the panel members, but also from the Indian people perspective, from the ground level perspective. So we will see how much we will cover during the 20 minutes panel discussion. So with that said, please introduce yourselves.
Should I go first? All right. Hi, I'm Raoul Joshi. I work at McKinsey & Company based out of here in Stockholm. I spend most of my time in Swedish industrial companies and R&D environments, but also we have a think tank or a McKinsey Global Institute where we spend some time thinking about more broader topics, and 2 themes are technology innovation and urbanization. And smart cities is where I spent most of the time, and how mobility and, well, I guess the theme of this discussion comes into play. Do you want us to do a quick round first and then?
Yeah, let's do like one each, one at a time, and then we will go on the panel discussion.
Okay, my name is Catarina Naucler. I work as a Research and Innovation Manager for Fortum, sitting here in Stockholm. And Fortum is a utility company in the Nordics with growing businesses in Russia and India, where we actually go for the sun, of course, and the mobility. So right now we are also pushing also different kind of innovations. So we have an accelerator process inside our company where we have a lot of things in the mobility sector and looking into electrifying electrical three-wheelers in swap-ins. So we hopefully will have a pilot ongoing now in India.
Okay. Morning, namaste. Hey, I guess that's how we do it. My name is Bhagwan Bindiganavile. I head up strategy and marketing for Buses Region International. It's a pleasure to be here today and participate in the discussion. As we celebrated Diwali last week, it was also very special for Volvo in India, 20 years. And I think most of you, I mean, as friends of India, know that a great bus in India is a Volvo bus. And as we look forward, I mean, you know, to the next generation of sustainable transportation, right? It'd be great to look back. I mean, 20 years back, 20 years forward. I mean, 20 years forward looks scary. 20 years back is just yesterday, right? And I think with that perspective, and as we kind of start to think of these perspectives, I mean, it'd be great to kind of participate in the discussion and engage in it. I know that all of you here in various sections, I mean, have contributed to what I'll actually show. So thanks for that. But I think that also means that we would, you know, at the end of it, I mean, Daniel, perhaps, you know, use the opportunity to engage the audience in dialogue. Yeah.
Definitely, very good idea. Is there anyone here who wants to show any slides? Yeah. So do you want to do it like now, before
Yeah,
we're
sure.
taking up?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Can we get some?
You don't.
I have the.
You have it.
Oh, you have it. Oh,
Yeah,
great.
come prepared. Okay.
Oh, that's actually my presentation.
No, that's yours. Go ahead. Point it.
Okay, should I start then? Look at this one. This is amazing. I know you said that the sun is not going up today, but this is something actually. So 2 hours is what we need globally. Unfortunately, as you know, here in Sweden or in the Nordics, we won't survive on the sun, but there is other places. You know, today, photovoltaics or the solar is the cheapest way to produce electricity. So this is actually why electricity will be the future energy carrier. And if you look into electricity of the mobility sector, there is also other benefits with using electricity in the mobility. Oh no, what's going on now? Okay, so, yeah, okay, sorry for that.
Oh,
so of course you could see that electricity has a lot of other stuff also. It's quiet. That's lovely, isn't it? And then of course the SOx, the NOx, the CO2 emissions. So electricity is super efficient. As maybe some of you know, the electrical engine is actually much more efficient. And the electricity price will, you know, continue to go down with the PV. So electricity will win in the end. And this is really, really an opportunity for India, I would say. So what we are doing in Fortum, we are leading in the Nordics for EV charging. And Norway is the only mass market globally in the world. So we have a lot of experience from that market where we are market leader. So what we are doing right now is that we take our infrastructure and our solution and put it into India. So right now we have 19 fast charging places in India up and running. And the plan is to have 200 up and running next year. And then, you know, continue to grow. But of course, this is cars for free-wheelers. So what we are doing also at the same time, actually, now we'll see yeah. So what we are looking now is actually that it might be so that the smaller vehicles might be the ones that are even more important for a country like India. And here we actually see that when we go to lighter wheelers, it might be so that the swapping idea might be super good. I don't know, some of you might been traveling here today by an electrical car or an electrical bike, and there you take, the small battery out. And what we see is that those three-wheelers is probably also so that you could swap the battery. They are not so big, and it's quite efficient. And there is many possibilities here with the swapping of the three-wheelers. And some of them is actually that you could actually do the business model really different. Someone could own the vehicle and someone could own the battery. And then you could also have a lot of batteries and you could share them. Because if you today have electrical three-wheelers, it takes like some hours to charge it. And there are those kind of electrical three-wheelers going around in Stockholm, if you had tested them. Bzzzt, they're called. Super nice. They also called pod taxi, because they have, the pod ongoing. So my daughter called it pod taxi. I say bzzzt. But they are really, really nice, but it takes like 4 hours today to charge them, which means that in Stockholm, they have 2 vehicles and 1 driver. That's really waste of capital. So what you can do here is if you have swapping stations and batteries and you share the batteries, that means that you could actually have fewer of those ones and you could actually do it differently. So this is what we are doing right now. This is a pilot. We are doing it with Clean Motion for the EVs and then all our cabs in India. So we hope that we will have 30 three-wheelers during December and 1 swapping station to test this. And we really think that this is one way to go forward. So with this, we hope that we could help you to reach a cleaner world.
I don't have any slides.
You don't have any slides, but you have slides maybe.
Thanks.
Or you could use mine. They were quite nice.
Yeah, I might have to use your slides.
Yeah, it's okay. You are welcome.
Do we get some help here?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that was just to make sure that you got my name. Yeah, it's difficult even for Daniel if you'd lived all your life in India, right? So 2 years don't do it.
Did I pronounce it right? Your last name?
Let's
move on.
I'll plead the 5th. Okay. So when we talk about sustainability in the Volvo Group and with Volvo buses, I think it's extremely important to nuance it right. It's not just the environment, right? I mean, we can have the perfect vehicle of one, and it's not enough, right? I mean, Mr. Kohli spoke about scale. I think it must be relevant to a larger audience. Then we can talk about technology. I mean, is it sustainable? I mean, a well-to-wheel perspective. Where do we get the energy from, and how do we use it? And that's an important, aspect to kind of consider in discussions today. And then of course, the environmental impact, of how we do things. It is true that, as we look at the future, cities today, they occupy, 3% of land mass, but contribute over 70% of emission, right? So there's a disproportionate, logic here. And if we start to frame why we are here, let's think in terms of the needs of today and then the needs of the future. I think, from a Volvo bus perspective, of course, we see population growth and urbanization. And across the region that I have the privilege to work with today, covering Africa, Asia, Australia, I think what one sees is that, cities are starting more and more to recognize the need to address transportation in a way that makes the cities livable and makes the cities function. I mean, there's a lot of perspectives coming in over the last few years in terms of, oh my God, what got us here isn't going to keep us here. And what's that going to be and how is that going to be, right? I mean, change of demographies, older populations. It's no longer okay to have to go farther to get into a bus or, so on and so forth. Those are questions. Climate change and alternate fuels. If it was a question 10 years ago that had more skeptics than believers, I think today, you have shades of believers, right? It's no longer somebody who kind of looks at that and worries about it. We see as large parts of the world came online, the pressure on resources and raw material. I mean, it's one thing to have, a small population of the world, have access to large amounts of raw material and so on. And as that kind of averages out, there's a pressure on raw resource, raw material. And then, of course, the pressure on traffic and road safety. And I think that if we look at India today, I mean, this is obviously an area of immense importance to policymakers to as infrastructure grows, also see it grow in a mature and safe way. And I think that those are all issues here. So just a few years ago, 1 in 2 people lived in cities. In the next 10, 2 out of 3 will. And what that means is that cities, I mean, if you think they're bad today, without us having this dialogue today and implementing some of the outcomes of this dialogue, going to see things just get worse, progressively, exponentially worse. And I think that's something that we need to think about. And here's a picture that's a favorite of mine. And I think it talks to the scale that well thought through public transportation can do. If we look at the auto industry, we're talking about autonomy, we're talking about connectivity, and we're talking about I get extra time. Yeah. Just kidding. Yeah. So I think if you look at it, I mean, the picture to your left obviously shows what can happen if to infrastructure, to road infrastructure, if we have cars, and those can be autonomous, and we can get better, but they still need so much road space. And if you kind of replace that with well thought through public transportation, that same road can service many more people. I mean, others before me, I mean, Mayor Penrose has spoken about buses being democracy in action. When you put a lot of people in a bus and that gets priority, it says something about society in terms of what happens to us and so on, right? So here's a slide, and this is more for stating here. I mean, this is a slide that Håkan Agnewall, the president of Volvo Buses, presented a year ago as part of the smart city initiatives for Sibler, Robin. I think something that you'd been part of. But I know that many of you in this room, I mean, representing Business Sweden, SIBC, I mean, have been part of preparing this material, I mean, in your memberships. So I think it's important. I think it's clear, I mean, from your comments that electricity is the future. It's clean, it's neat. But I think it's also important to understand the sources of electricity and its use. I think that's something that we need to think about. We know now, I mean, that India has reached a level where it's self-sufficient in terms of production of electricity. It's enough. Now the challenges are, of course, in terms of business models for distribution, and of course getting it out there. And that's of course a natural progression. What we see is the need for a well-thought-through electromobility strategy. How do we work with that zone? Infrastructure to get it out there. Planning, planning, planning. So there are 3 messages on this slide. It's planning, planning, planning. It's to think in terms of how to fund public transportation, how to get people out of cars into buses. And it's about the customer, the passenger, getting them in the bus. A good bus gets a person out of a Volvo car into a Volvo bus. I mean, I love them, but at the end of the day, what will get somebody out of a car or off a bike onto a bus? Why would we do that? We have experience firsthand in India where many of the people I know take a Volvo bus between cities. And that's because it's neat, it's comfortable, it's great, it's safe. And I think those are the kinds of thoughts that we need to kind of put in. Thanks for bearing with me.
Thank you, Bhagwan. Thank you. So you talked about some bigger picture, and also Catarina talked about your projects in India. We're gonna kind of come back to this and hope that you can elaborate a little bit more on the bigger picture. So, as the earlier speakers here has been talking about, we are in this massive global transformation pushed by megatrends such as climate change and urbanization and natural resource scarcity, etc. And estimates say that by 2030, 60% in India will live in urban areas, whereas it's more or less the opposite at the moment. So what important role does smart mobility have in emerging megacities in India? Anyone who want to start on that? Or I can, so if we say, Raoul, I read in the McKinsey report, Smart Cities. So can you tell us about the importance of that smart mobility strategies needs to start with the people and not with people, not technologies, which are the cases a lot of times?
Absolutely, and I think it touches upon your first question as well. I don't have any slide material. I do enough of those day to day, so I thought I would work on more the speaking part and getting more in connecting simply. The work we've done around smart cities, and especially in terms of mobility, is if you've heard the term smart cities, etc., 10 years ago, and you feel that you're still talking about it, it's true. The term itself has been around for quite a while, but in this first generation of smart cities that a lot of cities have used, 1.0, it's actually faced quite some criticism, just to your point, that a lot of the experience has been companies coming to city officials and more or less feels like throwing technology at the cities. In this new, and now we've learned from those 10 years, and now we're moving into this smart city 2.0, which if you look out, if you try to find 10 sources on defining a smart city, you'll find 10 different answers. But one way that's a bit of a common denominator is one that takes the quality of life of a citizen as its starting point, and then seeing how technology helps alleviate or alleviate pain points and improve quality of life. Convenience and time are one important dimension then of that, and that's where transport and the whole framing for public transportation and next generation mobility comes into play. Just some facts. When we look at some of the technology being used out there in the world right now and implementable in the 2025 timeframe, and you've touched upon one of those already, it can help improve transportation time, the time we sit commuting from home to work, between 14 to 20% by 2025. In a city of 5 million people, that could mean around 15 to 30 minutes shaved off your daily commute. If you scale that up, what that might mean over a course of a year, we're looking at 5 days, over 5 days, not spending in traffic, so to speak. That is a lot about, okay, what do you do with those? I mean, there's like a productivity or economic aspect of that, or what do you do with those extra 5 days? But that's essentially the quality of life aspect. So the questions that we try to reframe it as, instead of saying which technology, is it e-rickshaws or is it something else, we try to look at, okay, transitioning to this into the public transportation, how does it, you start off more about what are the mobility pain points today, why are people traveling the way they do, and then using that as a basis to devise what infrastructure do we need, what solutions do we need, and in fact also a lot of these you might have the best infrastructure and the best solution, but if nobody's using them, then that doesn't really help. So what kind of user experience and interfaces do you need on those solutions so they actually get adopted? I think we can just, and then where does India then, what do we know, what are some insights on Indian cities? We've looked at some of them, and then I think we've benchmarked or looked at around 10 of the most populous and most congested cities where there's a lot of private transport. So in 8 out of 10 cities then in mega cities then in India, public transportation is used less than 50%. So out of all daily trips made, public transportation is less than 50%. so there's a lot of private transport. They are predominantly dominated by two-wheelers. So a lot of two-wheelers make up a lot of those public trips or private trips. So like the problem statement is rather, okay, how do we get, if you want to capture the 80% effect from the 20% of the effort, Pareto principle is, how do we get two-wheeler transport, private transport, how do we get them to transition to using public modes of multimodal transportation? Buses may be one, and then might be a mix of others as well.
Is there any other?
Can I interrupt there?
And exactly, and that's the problem statement, I guess, then, so to speak.
Thank you. And I sit here because it's so much more cozy. So building on that, you're saying that the potential to save time for the citizens are huge. We have this people perspective. I would like to invite you, Bhagwan, about that. Like, why are comparatively few people in India using conventional public transport? And how do you see the change in the next 15 years?
I mean, we're all creatures of comfort, right? I mean, so we need to get back something for giving up the convenience of using our own transport to at a beck and call. It's inefficient. I think the economics are very clear. I think ultimately one has to come back to the question of how do we kind of motivate folk to get off a car or a two-wheeler and get into a bus, right? And I think that our experiences have been that that modern buses can provide that reason, right? I mean, they're comfortable. I can actually watch a movie on my phone as I kind of I mean, I don't have to drive, right? I don't have to do something there. All those nice things. But I think, there's an interesting thing. Of course, I think, it starts with motivate. It's about people at the end of the day, right? It's about the passenger and providing them with a reason that is substantial. And I think if we look at technology today, and if we look at connectivity, automation, things like that coming along, I think, and putting it in the context of a billion people in India having cell phones with data. I think you start to create an opportunity where you can begin to offer, kind of the values that when Raoul and Catarina have spoken about, in terms of offering clean, sustainable, that you can do good. So doing good almost becomes a byproduct of the value that you get for yourself.
But we talked a couple of days ago, and you said that Volvo has tried to change the perception of the citizens to travel by bus.
Absolutely.
But there is also this factor about first and last meter connectivity, which you have to work on that, even though you can change the perception of safety and comfort and luxury. Mm-hmm. So that, since Fortum, you're really working on this with these three-wheeler, or did you say
three-wheelers?
The three-wheelers.
Yes, that's what we
So how do you, with the project with Clean Motion, how do you fit your perspective into this problem area that both Raoul and Bhagwan are talking about?
Probably it's so that we will need different kind of transport solutions in the city. And of course, the three-wheelers are there huge today, and they will be there also tomorrow. So we are more looking into how do we get this, how can we electrify the three-wheeler sector, and what is the best way forward for those ones. And there we see and really believe that the swapping solution is the best way. And we are coming in from a business and innovation point of view, but still try to see that the way you use three-wheelers could, with the swapping solution, be quite the same. So we are not there really to change the behavior in that sense. You could use the same, maybe not really the same three-wheelers, but you could use these three-wheelers. You use them as you do today, but there is a lot of other benefits. Okay. So I think probably the transport sector will be, needs to be changed in different parts.
Yeah.
Where of course the public transportation is one part, but that is not our core focus right now.
Yeah, and Bhagwan, you were talking about the importance of safety and comfort and luxury. I really remember when I was in India, I didn't have a choice. I had to travel by bus, but it was quite scary. And I remember my mom, who came to visit and also worked there, she said that I would love to go back, but unfortunately I will never do that again with that experience on the road. So, but apart from that, where are Volvo Bus when it comes to like a green fleet, hybrid and electricity transport vehicles?
Sure. I think you touch on an important point here, and I think, I mean, just to clear the air, I mean, there are other modes of transportation other than buses, yeah. and in the context of India, I think all of them are important. I think you spoke about first mile, last mile. I think, I mean, I think there's a whole gamut of solutions that would meet the needs of 1,300,000,000 people, yeah. So I think it's extremely important that it's not one against the other. It's all of them acting in concert that I think is very important. So coming back, I think the issue here is about making sure that we plan this. It's not going to happen by itself. You know, as cities grow, the need to invest in kind of future thinking and thinking about systems that kind of come in and kind of, you know, move folks from one place to another become more important than the technology at play per se, right? Over time, you know, and at Volvo Buses, we have the experience. I mean, we have the cleanest diesel fleet in India today, corresponding to BS Stage 4. We are ready for 2020 when India will skip BS5, go directly to 6. So India is not following a linear path of going 4, 5, 6, 7. It's going from 4 a year and a half ago, April 2017, to 6, April 2020. And the Supreme Court's come out of the ruling that makes that transition sharper than was even envisaged a few months ago, right? So I think India is on a path where I think, I mean, and you can imagine replacing, let us say, a few thousand, a few tens of thousands, a few hundreds of thousands pre-Euro emission standard vehicles with state-of-the-art Euro 6 solutions, right? I mean, that's a giant leap in itself. And then, of course, I mean, at buses, we talk about, you know, aligned with infrastructure setup. I mean, I think it's very important to understand that the vehicle is a small part of the total picture. And it needs to align with the journey on other elements of infrastructure. As we have electric supply for charging stations, as we establish those things, obviously pure electric buses, I mean, as we have battery manufacturing capabilities locally, right? These things start to become very important in the overall context. You just can't replace locally produced, and we produce our buses locally, right? Locally produced buses with imported technologies that have ways to go, right? So there's a journey from diesel to electric. I think we are on a good path in India to go from 4 to 6 on diesels. And then, of course, there are hybrids, there are plug-ins. I mean, there are biofuel alternatives, taking out range anxiety as charging infrastructure comes in place, and then you know, and over time move into full electrics. And I think the foundation for that is set. I mean, with comments that, I mean, Catarina has made in terms of the ability to have electricity first, right? That's there now.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be an enabler for the journey. I see this as a journey over a period of time.
Yeah, great.
Could I just add to, just very briefly to that?
Yeah. Can I just, I will just ask, we have another 5 minutes, so we will try to let the audience in, but please.
No, I just wanted to add some of these pain points that exist in India today beyond just the mode of transportation. You mentioned one, crowded transport, so there's a whole question around capacity to make people feel more convenient to use public transportation. Another one that came up when we were talking with people was around integrated ticketing systems. So today, if you need to switch from a bus or from a cab to a metro, for example, in Delhi, you might need to get new tickets all the time, which is also a problem against the convenience of having to use public transport. And the third one that adds a lot of buffers into people's daily commutes is lack of real-time information. So you don't really know what's going to come. So you add more buffer, more time into your transport. So there's a lot more than just of course, what we're talking about, more the vehicles itself than trying to help get people to change their behaviors to try to adopt public transport.
Thank you. We will hand over it to the audience. If you have any questions, please, you can raise your hand or give a sign. Do we have like a mic that we can? Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Oh, and over there.
Hi, my name is Vijay Shankar, and I've been living in Sweden for 31 years. Yeah, but I think you guys are totally wrong. Totally wrong, because we have a very important person sitting towards right of me. If you are thinking from 4.0 to 6.0, you're just creating another hell. You have to go to 4.0 to 14.0, because the distance that I would take to travel in 84 would take 15 minutes on a cycle, but today it will take 5 hours. Yeah, okay. I don't believe in Volvo buses. I don't believe in you guys. The thing is, you have to, if you want to innovate, you want to innovate on disruptive technologies, unacknowledged technologies. This is the future. But if you want to continue to destroy the world, I believe in you. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Hormas Kapadia. You can beat that guy. I've been living in Sweden for 49 years. There was a lot of synergy between what Catarina said and what Bhagwan has said here. And I'm curious to know why we are not standardizing batteries for especially buses and commercial vehicles, where you can just change the batteries instead of having to charge the existing batteries. Is there anything that's coming along? This is very interesting to see that our little tuk-tuks in Bombay will be electrified, which is great. They are with gas right now. And I would like to ask that question to Bhagwan.
Sure. I think if we look at buses, I mean, and if you look at the story of electrification today, where we are today as a broad industry, there are multiple solutions that are being worked on. And they include the entire gamut from actually, what you do with your cell phone, which is plug it into a wall for some time, to the possibility over time to perhaps swap batteries and so on. So there is work being done across. I think these all come with different logistical business challenges, and those need to be addressed as much. I think one of the issues that I presented was a comment on business models and financing models. So I think, if we separate the technology from the business model, you have both of these things being worked on. So I don't think, the future is definitely going to be one where you got to stay plugged in for 8 hours. I think, there's going to be space for all of it, and ultimately it's got to play out in terms of what adds value to the user.
Can I add something there? I think absolutely you're right with the standardization. It's super important. And I think for the swapping, I think it would be super, super good if this could be, the batteries could be used in different vehicles and different also two-wheelers. So we have been engaged in that also in India, trying to see, okay, what can the battery really look like and so on. But it takes time. Standardization, we know, takes time.
Yeah. Do we have one more question there?
My name is Sukya, and I've been in this country for 60 years.
Longer than me.
My question is to Fortum.
Yeah.
Is the production of batteries, which you're talking about, unlimited? There are problems with this, some of the materials being used for that.
Yeah, I understand you probably are thinking about cobalt and lithium ion, and then of course you need to understand what you mean with sustainability, because using cobalt in some of the part of the world, how you take the cobalt out from the ground is not sustainable out from the people who work there. What we see about the material as such is that you could go into different chemistries and where you actually are not so dependent on cobalt and lithium. So out from the efficiency in the battery and how will we have enough of resources, we believe that the answer is yes. Is it sustainable? I think it's super important how we work with the material. So there we also believe that we need to take care of these resources and really, really reuse them and recycle them. So that's why also Fortum is in the recycling business, take care of the material as such. I think that is super important. And back again, those are the scarce resource, not the energy. So we should use more of this nice solar, to really take care of the material that is actually the scarce resource.
Okay. I will have to wrap this up. I've only lived in Sweden 37 years. I can never beat you. But to wrap this up, I mean, India has a political ambition and are doing major investments in transportation. The technology is there. Matters Group is part of planning the first inductive road in the world on public road. Of course, there are different elements and technologies that will overlap, and development in different areas needs to happen, of course. And it will take time. It will take time for technology, infrastructure, and the people to adapt and being able to use it in an efficient way, of course. I would like to thank the panel very much and give it up for the Joshi and Catarina and Bhagwan.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.